The station's alarm systems screamed through every corridor. Red lights flashed across the command center walls. Ambassador Thelvik stood at the main viewing screen, watching another star system die. The Vexroth swarm had arrived 3 hours ago. Now, nothing remained but debris and silence. "That's the 12th system," his aide whispered. Her voice shook with fear. Thelvik nodded slowly. His forearms hung limp at his sides. The Galactic Coalition had tried everything. Their fleets engaged the swarm in careful, organized formations. They followed every rule of warfare that civilized species had agreed upon over thousands of years. None of it mattered. The swarm didn't negotiate. It didn't retreat. It consumed everything in its path. The viewing screen showed the enemy fleet moving toward the next system. Millions of bioships, each one a living creature bred for war. They moved like a dark cloud through space, blocking out the stars themselves. Coalition intelligence estimated their numbers at over 3 million vessels. The Coalition's entire military force barely reached 100,000 ships. "We need to evacuate the outer colonies," someone suggested from across the command center. "To where?" Thelvik asked. "The swarm moves faster than our civilian transports. Any evacuation will just delay the inevitable." The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. The Coalition had existed for over 2,000 years. 47 different species had joined together, choosing peace over conflict. They had built a society based on cooperation, trade, and mutual respect. Wars were rare. When they did happen, they followed strict rules. Planets were never attacked. Civilian casualties were avoided. Conflicts ended through negotiation. But the Vexroth didn't care about any of that. Thelvik walked to his private office. He locked the door behind him and sat at his desk. His hands trembled as he accessed the computer system. He entered a code that few beings in the galaxy knew existed. The screen flickered, then displayed a warning in bright red letters. "Forbidden archives. Restricted access." He entered another code. The warning disappeared. In its place came a list of species. The database showed races that the Coalition had discovered, but chosen not to contact. Some were too primitive. Others were too aggressive. A few were simply too different to communicate with. At the top of the list sat one entry: humans. Earth. Class the 12th Death World. Extreme caution advised. Thelvik had read this file before. Every Coalition ambassador studied it during training as an example of what to avoid. Earth was a nightmare planet, by galactic standards. Its gravity was twice what most species considered normal. The atmosphere was filled with oxygen, a highly corrosive gas that most civilized worlds kept in small, controlled amounts. The native life forms were aggressive, fast-healing, and incredibly adaptable. And humans were the apex predators of that world. The file contained recordings from the Coalition's first contact with humanity 70 years ago. Thelvik played one of the videos. It showed a human military vessel responding to a Coalition diplomatic ship. The meeting had started peacefully. Then, a misunderstanding occurred. The Coalition ship's AI defense system locked onto the human vessel, interpreting their scanning equipment as a targeting system. The human response was instant and overwhelming. They didn't try to retreat. They didn't attempt communication. They fired every weapon they had, crippled the Coalition ship, then boarded it. The video showed human soldiers moving through the corridors. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that seemed designed to fight other humans, not peaceful aliens. The entire incident lasted 4 minutes. The Coalition declared humans too dangerous for contact. They established a quarantine zone around human space. For 70 years, humanity had been isolated. No trade, no communication, no sharing of knowledge. The galaxy's message to Earth was clear: stay away. Now Thelvik was about to break that isolation. He found the emergency beacon system in the archives. It was old technology, designed for exactly this kind of situation. The Coalition had placed these beacons in several locations throughout the galaxy. They were meant to call for help from species that might be powerful enough to respond to an extinction-level threat. The human beacon was the only one that had never been activated. Thelvik's finger hovered over the activation button. He thought about what might happen. Humans might ignore the signal. They might still be angry about the quarantine. Or worse, they might come and prove even more dangerous than the swarm. But doing nothing meant certain death. The swarm would consume every Coalition world within 6 months. Trillions of beings would die. He pressed the button. The beacon activated with a soft chime. It sent a coded signal through the quantum relay network, a message that would reach human space within minutes. The message was simple. Coordinates of Sanctuary Prime Station, a description of the swarm threat, and one sentence in basic human language. We face extinction. Please help. Thelvik sat back in his chair. He felt exhausted. His aide knocked on the door, asking about evacuation plans. He told her to wait. For now, all they could do was hope. Far across the galaxy, the signal reached the edge of human space. It hit the quarantine zone boundary and triggered automated systems that hadn't been used in decades. Within seconds, the message was routed to military command. Captain Nari Kim was drinking coffee on the bridge of her ship when the alert came through. She was young for a ship captain, only 34 years old. But she had fought in the Mars Rebellion and survived the Titan campaigns. Her crew trusted her completely. Captain, we're receiving an alien transmission, her communications officer said. It's coming through the old quarantine network. Nari put down her coffee. Play it. The message filled the bridge. Nari listened carefully. Around her, the crew fell silent. When it finished, nobody spoke for several seconds. That's a Galactic Coalition signal, the communications officer said. Same species that kicked us out of their territory. I know, Nari replied. She read the message again. Send this to Fleet Command immediately. Priority Alpha. Within an hour, the signal reached Admiral Day 1 Park at Jupiter Station. He was a career military officer, 58 years old, with gray hair and scars from a dozen battles. He had been a young lieutenant during the first contact incident. He remembered the quarantine declaration clearly. Now the aliens were asking for help. Day 1 called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. They reviewed the message and discussed options. Some officers argued that humanity owed the Coalition nothing. Others saw an opportunity. If we help them, we can finally end the quarantine, one officer suggested. If we help them, we might just get more humans killed fighting someone else's war, another countered. Day 1 listened to both sides. Then he made his decision. Forward this to Earth. Let the politicians decide if we go. But start preparing the fleet anyway. If we do this, we'll need every ship we have. The message reached Earth 6 hours after the beacon activated. In government buildings across the planet and its colonies, leaders gathered to make the most important decision in human history. Were they going to save the galaxy that had rejected them? The Geneva Stellar Council chamber was full. Representatives from Earth and every human colony sat in the curved rows of seats. President Ji-won Che stood at the central podium, looking at the massive screen showing the alien distress signal. The room buzzed with argument. They isolated us for 70 years, Senator Mills from Mars Colony shouted. Now they want our help? Let them solve their own problems. Others agreed loudly. President Ji-won raised her hand for silence. She was 49 years old, a former diplomat who had spent years trying to negotiate with the Coalition before the quarantine. She understood the anger in the room. I know how everyone feels, she said calmly. The Coalition treated us like criminals. They refused to trade with us. They blocked our expansion into new systems. They told the entire galaxy that humans were too dangerous to meet. Then why are we even discussing this? Another senator asked. Ji-won touched a control on her podium. The screen changed to show new information. Because isolation has cost us more than we like to admit. We have no access to coalition technology. We don't know what's happening in most of the galaxy. We've been building our civilization alone, with only ourselves to rely on." She paused, then continued. "This is our chance to change that. If we help them now, we prove that we're not the monsters they think we are. We show the galaxy that humans can be trusted. Or we prove that we're useful attack dogs," someone muttered. General Wu Jinbei stood up from his seat. He was the supreme commander of the United Human Space Force. At 62 years old, he had spent his entire adult life in the military. His face was hard, marked with old scars. Everyone in the room knew his reputation. "If I may speak, Madam President," he said. Ji-won nodded. "Go ahead, General." Wu Jin walked to the front of the room. He looked at the assembled leaders with sharp eyes. "President Ji-won makes a good point about proving ourselves. But let's be realistic. If we go, we're not going as diplomats. We're going as soldiers." He pulled up tactical information on the screen. "This Vex Wrath swarm has destroyed 12 star systems. They outnumber the Coalition fleet by nearly 40-1. The Coalition's military doctrine is based on defensive formations and gradual attrition. That won't work against an enemy that doesn't care about casualties." "What are you suggesting?" someone asked. "I'm suggesting that if we do this, we do it properly," Wu Jin said. "We send our full combat fleet, 200 warships, every carrier, battleship, and destroyer we can spare. We go in hard, we hit fast, and we don't stop until the threat is eliminated." The room erupted in arguments again. 200 ships represented nearly the entire Sol defense fleet. It would leave Earth and the colonies with minimal protection. "That's insane!" a colony representative shouted. "What if someone attacks us while our fleet is gone?" "Who?" Wu Jin asked sharply. "The Coalition quarantined us. Nobody else knows we exist. Our only potential enemies are the Coalition themselves, and they're begging us for help." The debate continued for hours. Finally, G1 called for a vote. The motion passed by a narrow margin. Humanity would answer the distress call. 3 days later, Jupiter Station became the center of the largest military mobilization in human history. Ships arrived from Earth, Mars, the Titan yards, and the outer colonies. The enormous station's docks worked around the clock. Commander Hyun-Soo Lee stood in the main engineering bay of the flagship Defiant, watching his crew prepare the ship for combat. He was the chief engineer, responsible for keeping the massive battleship operational. Around him, hundreds of technicians loaded ammunition, checked systems, and ran diagnostics. "How's the gravity cannon?" Hyun-Soo asked his assistant. "Still experimental, but functional," she replied. "We've only test-fired it 3 times. Then we'll get to test it a 4th time soon," Hyun-Soo said with a grim smile. The gravity cannon was humanity's newest weapon. It created a small, temporary black hole that crushed everything nearby. The physics were barely understood, and the power requirements were enormous. But in simulations, one shot could destroy an entire enemy formation. In another section of the station, Colonel Bo-Ra Song briefed her Marines. 2,000 soldiers in full combat armor stood in perfect formation, listening to every word. Bo-Ra was 38 years old and had led ground assaults on hostile asteroids, rogue colonies, and pirate bases. Her soldiers called her the Hammer because of how she fought. "Listen up," she said, her voice echoing through the hangar. "We don't know much about this swarm. Intel says they're big, fast, and mean. They fight in close quarters with claws and acid. That's fine. We've fought worse." She walked along the front row, making eye contact with her troops. "Remember your training. Stay with your fire team. Watch your angles. When we drop hard. When we fight to win. Clear?" "Clear, Colonel," 2,000 voices shouted back. Bo-Ra nodded. "Good. Now get to your assault ships and prep your gear. We jump in 12 hours. Jump in 12 hours. On the bridge of the destroyer Indomitable, Captain Nari Kim reviewed fleet formations with her senior officers. Her ship would be part of the vanguard, the first vessels to engage the enemy. It was a dangerous position, but Nari had volunteered for it. The Admiral wants us to hit them hard right at the start, her tactical officer said. Show them what human ships can do. End. Raiderly. So, Nari nodded. Then that's what we'll do. Make sure all railgun magazines are full. I want every torpedo checked and ready. When we jump in, I want to start shooting immediately. Her crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had fought together for 3 years, through 2 major battles and dozens of smaller engagements. They trusted their captain completely. At the command center, Admiral Day-1 Park watched the fleet assemble. 200 ships, arranged in perfect formation. Destroyers on the outside, cruisers in the middle, battleships and carriers at the core. It was beautiful and deadly. His aide approached with a data pad. Sir, all ships report ready. The fleet can jump on your command. Axis. Day-1 took the pad and reviewed the final checks. Everything was green. He thought about what they were about to do. Humanity was leaving its territory for the first time in 70 years. They were going to fight in someone else's war, against an enemy they'd never seen, to save aliens who had rejected them. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It was exactly the kind of thing humans did. Send a message to all ships, Day-1 ordered. We jump in 1 hour. Destination. Coalition space. Mission. Elimination of hostile forces. All vessels are weapons-free upon arrival. We're not going there to negotiate. We're going there to win. The message went out across the fleet. On every ship, crews prepared for battle. Pilots checked their fighters. Gunners loaded their weapons. Marines sharpened their combat knives. In her quarters, Nari recorded a personal message to her family on Mars. She didn't know if she'd come back. The odds weren't great, but someone had to go first. Someone had to show the galaxy that humans were more than just violent primitives. She finished the recording and put on her uniform jacket. The bridge was calling. Her crew was waiting. The fleet was ready. Humanity was going to war. On Earth, President G1 watched the fleet departure on her office screen. She had made the decision to send them. Now, she could only wait and hope it was the right choice. Behind her, aides discussed what to tell the public. Tell them the truth, G1 said quietly. Tell them we're going to help people who need us. Tell them that's what humans do. At Jupiter Station, the countdown reached 0. Admiral Day-1 gave the command. 200 ships activated their quantum drives simultaneously. Space rippled and tore. The fleet vanished, leaving only the faint echo of displaced energy. They were gone, heading toward the coalition and the war waiting there. Far away, on Sanctuary Prime Station, Ambassador Thelvik stood at his viewing screen. His scanners had detected nothing yet. Maybe the humans ignored the signal. Maybe they were still angry. Maybe help wasn't coming. Then space tore open, and his sensors screamed warnings. Ships were arriving. Hundreds of them. Each one bigger and more heavily armed than anything in the coalition fleet. The Deathworlders had answered the call. The alarms on Sanctuary Prime Station went from red to purple. Every sensor system screamed at maximum alert. Ambassador Thelvik rushed to the main command center, his forearms clutching data pads. What he saw on the viewing screen made him freeze in place. Ships. Hundreds of them. They had appeared at the edge of the system in a formation that looked like a predator's teeth. Each vessel burned bright with fusion drives that pushed out more energy than some coalition ships used in a year. The formation was tight, aggressive, with smaller ships screening the larger ones in overlapping fields of fire. Scan them, Thelvik ordered. His voice came out as a whisper. The science officer worked frantically at her console. Their smallest ship is bigger than our heavy cruisers. The largest ones. Ambassador. The largest ones are the size of small moons. I'm reading weapon systems everywhere. Railguns, missile tubes, energy weapons, And something else I can't identify. Are they hostile? Someone asked nervously. Unknown, the officer replied. But they're definitely ready for combat. Thelvik straightened his uniform. This was what he had asked for. Send them a greeting on all frequencies. Tell them we're grateful they came. The message went out. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then one word came back in basic coalition standard. Acknowledged. A small shuttle detached from the human flagship. It moved toward Sanctuary Prime, with controlled bursts from its thrusters. Thelvik ordered the docking bay prepared. He gathered his senior staff and went to meet their visitors. The docking bay was designed for low-gravity species. The artificial gravity was set to 0, 6G. When the human shuttle docked and its door opened, Thelvik got his first look at the Deathworlders. Admiral Day 1 Park stepped out first. He was tall by galactic standards, with gray hair and a hard face. He moved carefully in the low gravity, each step precise. Behind him came Captain Nari Kim and 4 soldiers wearing heavy combat armor. The soldiers carried weapons that looked entirely too large. What struck Thelvik immediately was how the humans moved. Even in the low gravity, they seemed coiled tight, ready to explode into action. Their eyes scanned everything, noting exits and potential threats. They stood with their weight forward, like they were about to charge. Ambassador Thelvik, Day 1 said. His voice was rough. I'm Admiral Day 1 Park, commander of the Human Space Force 3rd Fleet. We received your distress call. Admiral, Thelvik replied, making the coalition gesture of greeting. Thank you for coming. We weren't certain you would answer. You asked for help, Day 1 said simply. We came. Now tell us about your enemy. The directness surprised Thelvik. No formal pleasantries. No diplomatic dancing. Just straight to business. He led the humans to the command center, aware of how the station's other inhabitants pressed themselves against walls as the soldiers passed. Fear rolled off them in waves. In the command center, Thelvik called up tactical displays. This is the Vexwrath Swarm, he began. They appeared at our borders 6 months ago. Since then, they've consumed 12 star systems. Their fleet numbers, approximately 3.7 million vessels. Nari laughed. Actually laughed. The sound was shocking in the tense room. Something funny, Captain? Thelvik asked, confused. You're outnumbered 40-1 and you kept fighting them in open battle? Nari said. No wonder you're losing. Day 1 shot her a warning look, but didn't disagree. He studied the tactical display. Show me their movement patterns. Fleet Coordinator Resismin, an Aquilan with silver scales, pulled up the data. They move in swarm formations. Very dense. Clustering. They overwhelm defensive positions through sheer numbers. We've tried standard defensive formations. But they just flow around you and eat you from behind. Day 1 finished. Yeah, that won't work against this kind of enemy. He touched the display, rotating the image. What about their individual ships? Armor? Shields? They're biological, Resman explained. Living ships grown in massive hives. Tough organic armor. No shields. They don't use energy weapons. They close to point-blank range and use acid, claws, and ramming attacks. Day 1 nodded slowly. So, they're bugs. Big space bugs that like to get close. He looked at his officers. That actually makes this easier. Thelvik didn't understand. Easier? Because our weapons are designed to kill at range, Nari explained. If they want to get close, we can shoot them the whole way in. Strategic Officer Eunho Kang stepped forward. He was younger than the others, with sharp eyes and a tablet computer. We need to see their largest concentration. Where's their main fleet right now? Gud. Resman pulled up new data. Kelrath 9 system. Approximately 400,000 swarm vessels stripping the 4th planet for resources. Perfect, Eunho said. He started sketching on his tablet. Here's what we do. The entire fleet jumps directly into the middle of the system. We launch all fighters and bombers immediately. Battleships and carriers stay at the core. Cruisers form a defensive sphere. Destroyers push forward in a spear formation. He looked up at the shocked aliens. We hit them with everything at once. Railguns, missiles, the gravity cannon. We engage at point-blank range and keep firing until nothing moves. The coalition officers stared at him like he was insane. That's suicide, Ressman said. You'll be surrounded instantly. That's the plan, Yunho replied. Surrounded means they're all in our firing range. But the casualties, Thelvik started, will be acceptable. Day One interrupted. His tone left no room for argument. The concept of acceptable casualties, when outnumbered 20-1, was incomprehensible to species who retreated when facing bad odds. Thelvik tried to find words to explain why this was a terrible idea. But Day One was already moving on. We'll need real-time intelligence during the battle, the Admiral said. Can your sensors track individual enemy ships? Yes, but, good, link your systems to ours. We'll coordinate targeting. Day One looked at his officers. Captain Kim, your destroyer group will lead the attack. 6 ships in the vanguard. You'll be the first ones in. Nari nodded without hesitation. Understood, sir. Colonel Borasong will command ground forces if we need them. Day One continued. If any swarm ships land on planets or moons, her marines will clean them out. He turned back to Thelvik. Your fleet should stay here. If things go wrong, they'll need to evacuate the station. We'll handle the actual fighting. You're not even going to let us help? Ressman asked, offended. With respect, Coordinator, your ships aren't built for this kind of combat. Day One said. Your doctrine is about minimizing casualties and preserving assets. Ours is about overwhelming violence and complete destruction of enemy capabilities. If your ships try to keep up with us, they'll just get in the way. The truth of it hung in the air. The coalition had built their military around the idea that wars should be controlled, measured, civilized. Humanity had built theirs around the idea that wars should be won, quickly and completely, no matter the cost. Thelvik felt a chill run through his body. Admiral, are you certain about this plan? Day One's expression didn't change. We came here to do a job. This is how we do it. Your people wanted the Deathworlders' help. This is what that looks like. Before anyone could respond, alarms sounded. A junior officer called out. Scout ships detecting enemy movement. The swarm is pushing toward the Dalcon colonies. 3 systems. Civilian populations in the millions. Day One didn't hesitate. How long until they reach the colonies? 18 hours at their current speed. Then we jump in 12. He looked at his team. Back to the ship. We need to brief the fleet and prepare for combat. The humans left as quickly as they'd arrived. Thelvik watched their shuttle return to the massive flagship. Around him, his staff looked shaken. They're insane, Ressman whispered. They're going to get themselves killed. Maybe, Thelvik replied. Or maybe that's what it takes to fight a war. Real war. Not the polite conflicts we're used to. 6 hours later, Thelvik watched the human fleet reorganize. Destroyers moved to the front. Carriers launched fighters for pre-battle checks. Battleships charged their main weapons. The formation looked like a spear pointed at the heart of the swarm. On the Indomitable, Nari addressed her crew over the ship's intercom. This is the captain. In 6 hours, we jump into combat. We'll be outnumbered and surrounded. The enemy wants to kill us and everyone in this sector. Our job is simple. We kill them first. Remember your training. Trust your equipment. Watch your teammates. And show these bugs why you don't pick fights with Deathworlders. The crew responded with a cheer that echoed through the ship's corridors. Admiral Day One sat in his command chair on the Defiant, watching the countdown timer. Around him, the bridge crew worked in calm efficiency. They had done this before. They would do it again. All ships report ready, sir, his communications officer announced. Good. Day One took a breath. Send to all vessels. Humanity didn't ask for this war, but we're going to finish it. Execute. Jump on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. Space rippled and tore. 200 human warships vanished, leaving only silence behind. They were gone to war. And the galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. Space tore open like a wound. 200 human ships appeared in the middle of Kelrath 9 system, exactly where Admiral Day One had planned. They emerged from quantum jump with weapons already charged and targeting systems active. The Vexroth swarm noticed immediately. 400,000 bioships had been stripping resources from the system's fourth planet. Now, they turned as one, responding to the new threat with insect precision. The response was massive and immediate. Enemy fleet reacting. The tactical officer on the Defiant reported. Estimate 300,000 vessels moving to intercept. The rest are maintaining position around the planet. Good, Day One said calmly. Let them come to us. All ships, commence firing. Target the densest formations first. The human fleet opened fire. Railgun rounds, accelerated to 5% of light speed, tore through space. Each projectile carried enough kinetic energy to vaporize a small building. The Indomitable fired 6 rounds per second from each of its 30 railgun turrets. The math was simple and brutal. 180 rounds every second, each one finding a target. The first wave of swarm ships died without knowing what hit them. Railgun rounds punched through their organic armor like it was paper. Internal organs exploded from hydrostatic shock. Acid blood sprayed into vacuum. Hundreds of bioships simply came apart, torn to pieces by weapons designed to penetrate human warship armor. Missiles away, the weapons officer announced. Fusion torpedoes launched from every human ship. They accelerated hard, racing toward the swarm formation. Point defense lasers from the bioships tried to intercept them, but there were too many targets. The missiles detonated in massive clusters, each one releasing gigatons of energy. Entire sections of the swarm fleet vanished in nuclear fire. Captain Nari stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching her tactical display. Her destroyer group was in the vanguard, 6 ships pushing deep into enemy territory. The swarm was trying to surround them, just as planned. All turrets, continuous fire, she ordered. Don't give them time to close the distance. The destroyer shook as its railguns fired non-stop. Point defense lasers created a sphere of death around the ship, cutting down any bioship that got too close. A swarm cruiser, the size of a small building, tried to ram them. Nari saw it coming. Emergency thrust, full power, maintain heading. The Indomitable's engines roared. The ship accelerated directly toward the bioship. At the last second, Nari gave another order. Brace for impact. Forminton. Resen. Nari gave another order. Brace for impact. Nari gave another order. Resen. The destroyer's armored prow hit the bioship like a battering ram. The organic vessel split in half, spilling acid and dying creatures into space. The Indomitable punched through the wreckage and kept firing. Hull breach on Deck 3, damage control reported. Sealing now. Keep us in the fight, Nari replied. Around her ship, the other 5 destroyers fought with similar aggression. They didn't try to avoid combat. They charged into it, weapons blazing. On the Defiant, Yunho watched his tactical plot. The swarm is clustering around our vanguard. They're ignoring the battleships. They're trying to cut off our spear tip, Day One observed. Perfect. Activate the gravity cannon. Target the cluster formation. At coordinates Delta 7, the gravity cannon was an experimental weapon. It created a small, temporary black hole that existed for exactly 3 seconds. In that time, it pulled everything nearby into itself, crushing it under impossible forces. The weapon fired. Space itself seemed to bend. At the heart of the swarm formation, reality twisted. 30,000 bioships suddenly found themselves falling toward a point of infinite gravity. They crashed into each other, armor crumpling, bodies compressing. When the effect ended, nothing remained but a sphere of compressed organic matter. Direct hit, Yunho reported. 30,000 targets eliminated. Reload and fire again, Day 1 ordered. Hit the next cluster. The battle raged for 4 hours. The human fleet fought with mechanical precision. When a ship's weapons overheated, it fell back while another moved forward. When ammunition ran low, ships rotated to the rear for resupply from the carriers. The formation never broke. The firing never stopped. The swarm tried everything. They sent waves of smaller fighters, which were cut down by point defense. They launched boarding pods, which were destroyed before they could attach. They tried ramming attacks, which only resulted in human ships using their superior armor to crush the attackers. By hour 6, the swarm fleet in Kelrath 9 had been reduced from 400,000 vessels to less than 50,000. The survivors were fleeing, breaking formation, and running for deep space. Pursue? Eung-ho asked. Negative, Daewon said. Let them run. They'll spread fear to the rest of the swarm. That's useful to us. But the battle wasn't over. A massive swarm hive ship, damaged and leaking atmosphere, crashed into one of the system's moons. Sensors showed it was still active, with thousands of warriors inside. Ground threat detected. Tactical reported. Day 1 opened a channel. Colonel Song, you have ground targets. Clean them out. Colonel Bo-Ra Song had been waiting for this. Finally, she said. All units, prep for orbital drop. We go in 5 minutes. 500 Marines loaded into drop pods. Each pod was basically a coffin-sized metal tube with a single seat and minimal life support. The Marine strapped in, the pod was loaded into a launch tube, and then fired at the target like a bullet. It was terrifying. It was also the fastest way to deploy troops. Bo-Ra sat in her pod, running final checks on her armor. The powered suit was 6 feet of composite armor and mechanical muscles. It made her stronger, faster, and nearly invincible against most weapons. Her rifle was mag-locked to her thigh, loaded with depleted uranium rounds that could punch through steel. 30 seconds, the launch computer announced. Bo-Ra took a breath. She had done this dozens of times, but it never got easier. 10 seconds. 9. 8. The countdown reached 0. Explosive charges fired, launching the pod from its tube. Bo-Ra felt the sudden acceleration, then the weightlessness of freefall. Through her pod's small window, she saw the moon's surface rushing up. The pod had no engines, no way to slow down. It just fell, faster and faster, until it hit the surface at terminal velocity. The impact force would kill an unprotected human instantly. Inside her powered armor, Bo-Ra just felt a hard jolt. The pod's door blew off. Bo-Ra unbuckled and stepped out onto the moon's surface. Around her, 500 other pods were landing like artillery shells. Her HUD linked to her squad automatically, showing friendly positions. Form up on me, she ordered. Fire teams of 4. We're clearing that hive ship from bottom to top. The Marines moved in perfect coordination. They had trained together for years. Everyone knew their role. They approached the crashed hive ship carefully. Weapons ready. The first swarm warrior came out of a crack in the hull. It was huge, the size of a ground car, with 6 legs ending in razor claws. Acid dripped from its mandibles. It saw the humans and charged. Corporal Jin Woo-han didn't hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired 3 rounds. The depleted uranium bullets hit the creature's head and blew it apart. The body collapsed, twitching. Contact, Jin Woo called out. They're active in there. Good, Bo-Ra said. Time to earn our pay. The Marines attached explosive charges to the hive ship's hull, blowing holes big enough to enter. Then they went in, moving fast and coordinated. The interior was dark, warm, and smelled like rotting meat. Perfect environment for the swarm, Terrible environment for anything else. It didn't matter to the Marines. Their armor had full sensor suites. They could see in infrared and thermal. The darkness meant nothing. The first major contact happened in a large chamber that had been some kind of breeding area. 50 swarm warriors poured out of side passages, screeching and clicking. They were fast, moving like spiders across the walls and ceiling. "Engage," Bora shouted. The chamber exploded with gunfire. Rifles barked, grenades detonated, plasma bolts lit up the darkness. The swarm warriors were tough and aggressive, but they were fighting humans in powered armor with military-grade weapons. It wasn't a fair fight. One warrior managed to break through the firing line and tackle a Marine. Its claws scraped against his armor, trying to find a weak point. Before it could, 3 other Marines shot it off their teammate. They helped him up and kept moving. The battle moved deeper into the ship. Room by room, corridor by corridor, the Marines cleared everything. When they found clusters of enemies, they used grenades. When they found single targets, they used rifles. When one warrior tore through a Marine's armor with lucky strikes, Jinwoo stepped forward and mag-dumped his sidearm into the creature's face at point-blank range. The warrior died. The Marine was wounded but alive. The squad kept moving. 4 hours later, the hive ship was silent. Every swarm warrior inside was dead. The Marines had taken casualties, 23, wounded, 4 dead, but they had accomplished their mission. Ground target neutralized, Bora reported to the fleet. Moon is secure. Over the next 10 days, this scene repeated across 4 star systems. The human fleet jumped from one swarm concentration to another. Each time, the pattern was the same. Jump in. Engage immediately. Fight until the enemy was destroyed or fleeing. No negotiations. No mercy. Just ruthless, efficient combat. The coalition observers watched in stunned silence. They had thought they understood warfare. Now they realized they had only known the civilized version. This was something different. This was war as practiced by a species that had spent thousands of years fighting itself. Admiral Day One rotated damaged ships out of the line and brought fresh vessels forward. He used every advantage humanity had: heavier armor, better weapons, faster ships, and soldiers who didn't hesitate. By the end of the campaign, the Vexarath swarm had been reduced from 3.7 million ships to less than 300,000. For the first time, they were retreating. They were running. On the Defiant, Day One studied the latest intelligence reports. The swarm was pulling back toward their home systems. That meant they could be tracked, and if they could be tracked, they could be eliminated. He called his senior staff. "We've stopped their advance. Now we finish this. Find me their home world." The intelligence came from a captured swarm bioship. Yunho's team had managed to access what passed for the creature's memory. The data was fragmentary and strange, but it contained one crucial piece of information: coordinates for the Vexarath home system. Admiral Day One stood in the briefing room with his senior officers. A holographic display showed the target system. It was deep in uncharted space, far from any coalition territory. The swarm had been hiding there for who knew how long, breeding their ships and planning their expansion. The system contains their primary hive world, Yunho explained. This is where they grow new ships, where their queens coordinate everything. Intelligence suggests the remaining swarm fleet has pulled back to defend it. We're looking at approximately 1.2 million vessels. The number hung in the air. The human fleet was down to 147 ships. 53 had been lost in the previous battles, some destroyed completely, others too damaged to continue. The survivors were battle-scarred and weary. "So we're outnumbered 8,000 to 1, Captain Nari said. She didn't sound concerned, just stating a fact. "Approximately," Yunho agreed. Daewon studied the hologram. The hive world was the 4th planet in the system, a massive super-Earth with thick atmosphere and heavy gravity, perfect for the swarm. Around it orbited dozens of construction hives, each one birthing new bioships. "If we destroy this world, we break the swarm permanently," he said. "They can't coordinate without the queens. They can't breed new ships without the hives. We hit them here. We end this war." "How?" Commander Hyun-soo asked. "We don't have enough ships to fight through 1.2 million defenders." "We don't fight through them," Dae-won replied. "We fight all of them at once. One massive battle, everything we have. Winner takes all." He touched the hologram, expanding it. "We jump in close to the planet. Tight formation, overlapping fields of fire. The swarm will have to come to us, because they're defending their home. When they close in, we hit them with everything." "And when we run out of ammunition?" someone asked. Dae-won's expression was hard. "We ram them. But we will complete this mission." The briefing ended. Officers returned to their ships to prepare. Nari walked the corridors of the Indomitable, seeing the damage from previous battles. Welded hull patches, replaced armor plates, memorial plaques for crew members who hadn't made it. Her ship had fought hard. Soon, it would have to fight harder. On the Defiant, Hyun-soo supervised final preparations. His engineering teams worked non-stop, repairing damage, loading the last of the ammunition, pushing every system to maximum readiness. The gravity cannon had been fired 4 times in the previous battles. Each shot stressed the weapon's containment systems. The calculations said it could handle maybe 3 more shots before catastrophic failure. Hyun-soo decided not to tell the admiral. 3 more shots would have to be enough. Colonel Bo-ra briefed her Marines one last time. They had lost 50 soldiers in the ground campaigns. The survivors were exhausted, their armor battered, but their spirits remained strong. She looked at her troops and saw the same determination in every face. "This is it," she told them. "The last fight. We win this, we go home. So let's make it count." Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Crews said goodbye to each other, recorded final messages to loved ones, and prepared for what might be their last battle. But there was no fear in their preparation. Just calm professionalism. This was what they had trained for. This was what they did. The fleet jumped 12 hours later. Space tore open at the edge of the hive system, and 147 human warships emerged in tight formation. Every weapon was charged. Every crew was ready. The swarm's response was instant and overwhelming. Sensors screamed warnings as the entire defending fleet turned toward the humans. 1.2 million bioships, moving as one coordinated organism. They formed a living wall between the human fleet and their home world. "Here they come," Tactical reported unnecessarily. Everyone could see them on the displays. "All ships, weapons free," Dae-won ordered. "Fire, at will." The human fleet erupted in violence. Railguns hammered away at maximum rate of fire. Missile tubes spat fusion torpedoes in continuous streams. Energy weapons carved through enemy formations. The gravity cannon fired, creating a pocket of crushed space that swallowed 10,000 bioships at once. But there were too many enemies. For every swarm ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. They came at the humans from every direction, closing the distance despite the brutal defensive fire. Nari fought her ship with practiced skill. The Indomitable was at the edge of the formation, taking heavy fire. Bioships rammed her shields, testing them. Acid sprayed across her armor. Her railguns never stopped firing, each shot precisely aimed, each shot finding a target. "Shields at 60%, her tactical officer reported. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Seal the breaches. Rotate shield frequency," Nari ordered. A massive swarm cruiser broke through the defensive fire and collided with the Indomitable. The impact threw everyone on the bridge sideways. Alarms screamed as the bioship tried to dig into the destroyer's hull with massive claws. "It's breaching the armor," damage control shouted. Nari made a split-second decision. "All port thrusters, Maximum burn. Roll us over. Nari. Ass. Nari. The Indomitable spun hard. The bioship, caught in the maneuver, lost its grip. As it tumbled away, Nari's gunners tore it apart with point-blank railgun fire. The battle raged for 3 hours. Human ships fought with everything they had, but the numbers were overwhelming. The cruiser Steadfast took too much damage and had to pull back. The destroyer Vigilant suffered a catastrophic magazine explosion and was destroyed. 30 ships became 25, then 20. On the Defiant, Hyun-Soo watched his power system strain. Admiral, we can fire the gravity cannon one more time. After that, the containment will fail. Then make it count, Day One replied. Target the Queen ships. Coalition intelligence had identified the massive command vessels that coordinated the swarm. They were buried deep in the defensive formation, protected by hundreds of thousands of bioships. Kill the Queens. Break the coordination. The gravity cannon charged for the last time. Every spare joule of power from the Defiance reactor was channeled into the weapon. The ship's lights dimmed. Life support reduced to minimum. Everything for one final shot. Firing, Hyun-Soo announced. The weapon discharged. Space bent. At the heart of the swarm formation, reality twisted into an impossible knot. 3 Queen ships, each the size of a small moon, suddenly collapsed inward. Their psychic scream echoed through subspace as they died. The effect was immediate. The swarm's coordination shattered. Bioships stopped moving in organized patterns and started acting individually. Some fled. Some attacked each other. The living wall broke apart into chaos. All ships, push forward, Day One ordered. Target the hive world. Use all remaining missiles. The human fleet, battered but unbroken, drove toward the planet. They launched every fusion torpedo they had left. Thousands of missiles accelerated toward the hive world, too many for point defense to stop. They impacted across the planet's surface in a rolling pattern of nuclear fire. The planet's crust cracked. Massive hives exploded. Breeding pools vaporized. The remaining queens died as their home burned. The psychic backlash spread through the swarm like a wave, stunning every bioship in the system. Cease fire, Day One ordered. The guns fell silent. Smoke and debris filled the space around the shattered hive world. The swarm fleet, what remained of it, was fleeing into deep space. They were broken, scattered, no longer a coordinated threat. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but the cost was terrible. Of the 147 ships that entered the system, only 100 survived. The fleet had lost nearly 12,000 personnel. Every surviving ship was damaged. Some were barely holding together. Nari sat in her command chair, exhausted. The Indomitable's bridge was a mess. Consoles sparked. Emergency lights flickered. But they were alive. They had won. Set course for Coalition space, she said quietly. Let's go home. The fleet limped back to Sanctuary Prime Station. They arrived 3 days later, moving slowly, nursing damaged engines and failing life support. When they emerged from Quantum Jump, the Coalition fleet was waiting, but not to fight, to honor them. Every Coalition ship had its running lights on full display. As the human fleet passed, they flashed their lights in the traditional salute. Hundreds of ships, thousands of beings, acknowledging what the humans had done. On Sanctuary Prime, Ambassador Thelvik waited at the docking bay. When Admiral Day One stepped off the shuttle, Thelvik made a formal bow. On behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I thank you, he said. You saved us, all of us. Day One nodded tiredly. We did what we came here to do. More than that, Thelvik replied. You showed us what we had forgotten. That sometimes, survival requires strength. That peace must be defended. That there are threats in this galaxy that require warriors. He straightened. The Coalition Council has voted unanimously. We invite humanity to join the Galactic Coalition as a full member species. No quarantine. No restrictions. Equal status with all other members. Daewon considered this. I'll pass your offer to our government. But understand something, Ambassador. If we join, it's as partners, not as attack dogs you call when you need something killed. If you want our friendship, it has to be real. I understand, Thelvik said, and I believe we do. The news reached Earth within hours. President G1 called an emergency council session. The debate was shorter this time. Humanity had proven itself. The galaxy had acknowledged it. The vote to join the coalition passed easily. 6 months later, the first diplomatic mission arrived in human space. They came cautiously, respectfully, and without any warships in sight. They met with human leaders, established trade agreements, and began the long process of building real relationships. Captain Nari, promoted to Commodore, stood on the bridge of a newly built Indomitable. The old one had been too damaged to repair. This new ship carried the same name and the same spirit. She watched the diplomatic ships come and go, wondering what the future held. On Earth, a memorial was built for those who had died in the war. 12,000 names carved in stone. At the dedication ceremony, President G1 spoke to the gathered crowd. These people died fighting for others, she said. Not for territory, not for resources, but because someone needed help, and they answered the call. That's what humanity does. That's who we are. The galaxy learned from the war. The coalition began reforming its military, learning from human tactics. Other species started viewing Earth not as a danger to be avoided, but as a friend worth having. And humanity? They continued doing what they had always done. Building, exploring, protecting. No longer alone in the dark, but part of something greater. The Deathworlders had been summoned. They had answered, and the galaxy was better for it.